Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first in 6 webinars on the TSAMM Angel Tree webinar platform. My name is Jeff Marquis, and I am the Director of TSAMM Services. And as we just give a few minutes here, as individuals continue to join, you might want to take this opportunity to familiarize yourself with the GoToWebinar platform if you haven't used this before. There'll be a few ways there for you to interact with the TSAMM team while we're walking through the webinar. You can share chat messages as well as ask questions. This training today is focused entirely on campaign settings, right? So we're looking at the initial setup of your Angel Tree campaign. We'll highlight a few things that may be slightly different to past years, but we're going to basically walk through the initial setup of an Angel Tree campaign for this year from a standalone core. I will highlight as we walk through a few of the nuances as it relates to those of you that may be a part of an area command. But for the most part, we're going to center squarely on those locations that operate independently of any other Salvation Army unit. As questions come up, by all means, go ahead and put them in the thread. We're not going to give a chance for any open communication until the end. The training section of this should take about 40 minutes or so, which should give us some good time at the very end, because here in the campaign settings is where you're building the foundation for your campaign. And there's a lot of ways that you can use the system as it currently sits to be able to help you accomplish. And so we'll be able to have some dialogue. By all means, with a few hundred people on this webinar, we probably won't be able to get to every single question. Our team will reply, but if you want to have any continued dialogue after this webinar, you can send an email to support@tsammm.com. And this is a way for you to be able to contact directly with the support team. So again, go ahead and share questions and chats as you need to, and then we'll have a chance for some additional questions at the very end. There's been a few questions that have come in about being able to view this webinar after the fact, whether that because you personally weren't able to stay the whole time or if you've got team members. But this video, as our other webinars, will be made available on our TSAMM library. I believe the link to that is in the chat thread right now. And so you can go ahead and see that in there, and you can go ahead and send support questions and emails to support@tsammm.org. But by all means, continue to reach out to us as you have questions. But for the sake of time and to be mindful of everyone's heavy plates that are happening right now around the Salvation Army United States, we're going to jump straight in. Our training today is going to take place in a testing/training environment, and so if you see any interesting data here, that's because we are in our training environment, and we're going to take this from the very beginning. So we are logged on as a Corps officer from the Tyler, Texas Corps. When you first come on to set up your Angel Tree, the first screen that the Southern Territory is going to get to will be this screen here, where it walks you through the activation process. If you are in the Western or Central Territory, you have a slightly different process. The Western Territory is governed on a territorial basis. The Central Territory, we ask that all the locations contact your Divisional Social Service Director to activate. But if you are in the Southern Territory or most locations in the Eastern Territory, you are going to get a screen that looks like this. And if you've used this in the past, you'll see here on the left, you'll see your past angels. And the first thing you're going to do is enter in the amount of angels you anticipate utilizing this year, or that you anticipate serving this year. Let me clarify. So if I'm going to do 1,250 angels, you are going to be in the bronze package. If you're going to do, let's say, 8,500 angels, you're going to update to be the silver package, and you'll move and adjust accordingly to give you the best financial benefit. And so you'll go ahead and put that in there. If you're, again, this is only applicable to the South and Eastern Territory. As always, I'm seeing a few hands go up, and we're not going to be able to stop for questions. So go ahead and put those questions or in the chat thread or in the question thread, and we'll be able to address those as we're able. You will first come in here and put in your billing contact information. This is important to have in place. You'll put in their email address, their phone number, mailing address. It's important to understand here at the very beginning, there's a few details here. In the end, you are going to not receive an invoice. If you receive an invoice, or again, some of it is handled at the territorial level. If you receive an invoice, you won't receive one until January. At the very bottom, you'll see the information around where a data paradigm is located when you go to submit a paper check. When you're done, you'll click I agree to the terms and click complete. This will give you an order summary. Some of you will print this off and pay this from this screen, which is perfectly fine, but understand that you're under no obligation to do so. This is not an invoice, this is an order confirmation. When you're done, you'll scroll to the bottom to get started and click on the Angel Tree module button. Once I do this, the first thing it's going to do is ask me, do you want to carry forward any settings from a previous year? Now, as you can imagine, campaign settings for most locations will roll over from year to year to year. And in this case, we want to save you some time in this effort. So in this case, we're going to carry forward the 2024 Tyler Core Angel Tree. So this takes 10 to 15 seconds to kind of put into place as it creates sites, creates locations, it updates information, and you end up on a screen that looks like this. And this is your campaign configurations. If you've already started your campaign, maybe you've either skipped this step or already done this step, to get back to this screen, you're going to find this under Admin Campaign. You'll come there and that will bring you straight to this screen. And so what we're going to do now is we're basically going to walk essentially from left to right. We're going to walk tab by tab for you to understand both what this information translates to, as well as how you can use this information to your benefit. The very first screen that I'm brought to is my general campaign settings. Here at the very beginning, I can update my campaign name. This is pre-populated with the name of your location from within the TSAMM platform. So I understand that you may go by one name, but then in the public go by another name. A core that I was familiar with in Florida, their core, for a long time, they were the Stuart, Florida core. But really, in terms of the public perspective, they were the Martin County core. So in that case, if I want to change the Tyler core to Tyler County core, I can literally just come and update this information here. And this helps to communicate. This gets used throughout the system as it relates to public elements. All right, I want to I'm getting a quick note to say people are saying they can't hear me. And so let me just pause for 30 seconds because I've been going for a while. Dan, if you can unmute, just let me know. If you can hear me, Dan, then it's going to be something on that user.
I can hear you, Jeff.
Okay, I appreciate it, Dan. So unfortunately, at this point, the sound seems to be coming through, so maybe there's a situation on your local device that you may need to address. But we're going to jump back in. Unfortunately, I have my limits on my technical support that I can give throughout the course of this webinar.
Others are saying they can hear you now, Jeff. So
look at this. Look at this skills. Won't he do it? All right. So we're going to jump straight back in and work our way through these data points. As I work down at the top, most of these are fairly self-explanatory. This one here says, what is my max angel age? And this basically says that in order for a child to be eligible for Angel Tree, for your campaign, they have to be this age or younger as of this date. So we're going to go ahead and update this to be, we want to say that you have to be 12 no later than December 31st, 2025. Maybe you have other standards. Maybe you do 13, 15, 18. We've seen as high as 21 in some rare occasions. Also, depending on the date, some of you go based off of Christmas Day as opposed to the end of the year. This is entirely your option when it comes to your campaigns that are in place. As I come down here, this next one requires a little bit of forethought. And this is allowing applicants with no angels. If you set this to no, every applicant that goes to apply has to have at least one angel that is eligible for Angel Tree, at least one child eligible for Angel Tree. Some locations will use the Angel Tree platform for both angel processing, but as well as food box only, right? So if you are a location that wants to take the intake and distribution functionality of Angel Tree and apply it to a Christmas box, you can do so, but you're going to want to set this to say yes, that you want to allow angels that have no eligible, or you want to allow applicants that have no eligible angels. Otherwise, no one's going to get a food box unless they have a kid under the age of 12. Well, in this testing environment, we are going to say, no, we don't want to allow applicants with no angels. At the next section here is whether or not you want to allow senior angels. Now, a senior angel is just exactly what it sounds like, an individual that is over a certain amount of a certain age is eligible to also be marked as an angel. You can do this in one of two ways. I can say that I want to set a minimum angel in which by the time of registering, they have to be at least 65 years and older. Or in some cases, you can say that there's no minimum senior angel age. The way the system operates is that when an applicant puts in their household members, the system will prompt them to say, this person is eligible for Angel Tree. Do you want to sign them up? If I select no minimum senior angel age, technically, everyone is going to be eligible for Angel Tree. So it's going to be incumbent upon the applicant to be able to determine whether or not their child is signing up. Often we see individuals that get added at this maybe below 65 as if they have a special needs in which you are providing gifts for them this Christmas season, even though they technically aren't a senior, right? They're not over 65. And so, but if I want to set a minimum senior angel age, I'll do this here. And I'm going to say we want them to be at least 65 years age or older in order to be eligible for Angel Tree. As I keep working my way down, we just have a few more data points on this general setting. The first of which is, what do we want our final gift return date to be? This is something that gets communicated to the public, especially when they use online adoption, that if you're doing distribution on December 15th, we want those gifts back by December 9th. And so by all means, we'll go through and update this. And for this setting, we're going to set that we want the final gift return date to be Saturday, December 13th. We want to get the gifts back by this date. A few more data points here is your angel tag template. One of the most favorite features of the Angel Tree module is the creation of your angel tags, the physical tags that you will place on a tree at a business, at a Walmart, at the mall, where people from the public can come and adopt angels. Most of you will use the standard template. Now you have a sample here that I can come in and I can zoom in here and you can kind of see the data. These are designed to be formatted for the angel tags that you would print, that you would receive from your local trade department. Now, I will put a little bit of a caveat here that we have an FAQ specific about this item that we keep up to date, because sometimes trade will create and circulate angel tags that is not coded to be formatted to match that tag. So there's plenty of angel tags in place that you can use. But if not, you can come here and update that. Everyone has a few standard options. You also have the option for custom angel tags. There are a few situations in which locations, whether it be because of a local donor or an existing system before they started to use the Angel Tree module, they have paid to create a custom angel tag format. If you're interested in that this year, we have a limited number of slots because there's some effort there, and there is some additional time to turn that around. Usually it takes anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks for that to be available. But you'll go ahead and send that request to support@tsamm.org. so that you can circulate that through. So you can, if you want to explore what a custom angel tag could look like for your location, you'll go ahead and reach out to support@tsam.org. But like I said, we last year, somewhere right around 85% of the locations use the standard template as it relates to their angel tags. The last two here, the first one is whether or not you want to print the first name on the angel tags. There are some locations that only would want to say boy age 8 as opposed to Jeff age 8. And so if you don't want to print your angel's first name on the tags, you'll simply change this to no. Understand that if you are at an area command level, this setting is going to be applied site-wide. So I am based here in Dallas in the North Texas area. I go to the Louisville core. We could not hide the first names at the Louisville core and then show them for other locations in the command. This decision is going to be made on a command-wide setting. And so you'll want to make sure if you are a part of an area command that you go ahead and get that squared away with your team. Lastly here is adopt a family. This is a whole feature that was rolled out a few years ago that we're going to go into on Thursday when we talk about applicant processing. So I'm not going to talk too detailed about what this is, but if your location is going to use the adopt a family feature, this is where you enable that, either yes or no. We're not going to have adopt a family at this point. When you're done, you'll go ahead and click Save Changes. At this point, anytime I want to come back in, I'll click Edit Campaign in order for me to update these data points. You can do this as frequently as you need. If you happen to have, if you really want, like the example I just gave with Louisville, with their first names not showing, I can come in as an administrator, edit the campaign, change the setting, go ahead and print those angels, then change it back when I print the rest, right? So you have some flexibility to come in and update this as needed. If you find halfway through the season you have more slots than you previously thought you might have for angels and you want to raise the age from 12 to 13, you can do that mid-season. This is not something that you have to have squared away. It does not retroactively update any applicants. So any applicants that came in prior to you making that setting change wouldn't necessarily be eligible to sign up if you make that change. Hopefully that makes sense, but you have some flexibility to come in and move across. Now the next site here is called Sites. Now, as you might imagine, this is really going to build the foundation for the next 4 tabs. As you see on your screen, intake through distribution. The actual physical site that you have needs to be configured here at this location. On sites. To create it, to see an existing site here, if I look at the Christmas warehouse, I can see here, I'm going to put in the information, the address, the responsible unit. For those of you that have multiple locations within your command, you're going to say that this intake site or this distribution site is assigned to the Louisville core, whereas this one is assigned to the Garland core. And you can kind of move around and update that as needed. When I come in, one thing that people often don't do is they have the ability to really be specific with my PIN. This PIN, if you're doing for an adoption or drop off, will be posted on your website, which we'll talk about just in a little bit. But let's say you want people to come to the back side of this building, not to the front side. I can literally pick up this PIN and bring it to the back and then save that PIN location. We can be very granular when it comes to where we want the public to come to. So that way, when they look at the map on the public site, they're going to see exactly where we want them to go, as opposed to just a general address. This is really helpful for those locations that might have multiple addresses kind of in one area, or if you've got multiple entrances and you want to make sure they go up the ramp on the side of the building instead of the main entrance in the front. Again, locations can come and they can still see that, but that's a way for them to be able to kind of be processed. So as it comes through, you also have the ability to make a site inactive. This is something we rolled out last year, that if I come in, you can see here that there are 2 locations here that have been marked as inactive. Right, we've removed them from the system, and as a way to make that kind of clean, to clean that up a little bit, there's a little toggle here on the right that says to show inactive. You can hide those as you need to. This, you'll probably have a better idea here in about 10 minutes once we go through each one of these sections, but each one of your sites will be associated as an intake site, adoption, drop-off, or distribution. And most of those are fairly explanatory. An intake site is where someone applies. This is also where someone would apply virtually. If they're using the public interface, if they are using saangeltree.org to apply, and you want to associate them with the Louisville core versus the Denton core, they would make that a designation here. You can create multiple sites and mark them as intake sites. So as you're looking here, there's going to be intake associated with the Christmas warehouse, the social service building, and the Tyler core. This is basically what we're telling the system is this is where applications are going to be associated with. Adoption is for those locations to where the public can go and pick up angels. Now, I understand that many of us might have quite a few angels, right? So not many locations would create every single Walmart, but you can if you want that to be to do so. We are communicating to the public the adoption, and you'll be able to configure each one of these sites hours once we get to that tab. Same thing with drop-off. Whereas you can go to the North Park Mall, the Tyler Core, and Walmart to adopt angels. If you want to drop them off, you can go to those same locations, but you can also bring them straight to the warehouse. And we're going to be able to communicate to the public exactly where they can drop off. The last side here is, the last column here is distribution. This is where we're giving our angels out from. As you'll see later, especially in future webinars when we process the applicant, the distribution is where you're going to tell and where they're going to get their angel codes from. All of these things are tied to the distribution site. So in this case, both the Christmas warehouse and the social service building are functioning as distribution sites. And you can get really creative in this. There's nothing in the system that's going to prevent me from having the same address for multiple sites. I'll give you an example. The second largest angel tree operation in the United States is in Phoenix. And what they've done is they've created six different distribution sites, all with the same address, but one is for Monday, for Tuesday, for Wednesday, for Thursday, because they want their codes, they want their system to be siloed accordingly, right? So rather than having 5 days of distribution from the Christmas warehouse, they essentially created Christmas warehouse Monday, Christmas warehouse Tuesday, etc. And that allows them, when they assign the distribution appointment, that they're able to very easily go in and organize them accordingly based on the codes, etc. I'm seeing a few questions come in. Forgive me, we're going to kind of power through here and then have a lot of questions here at the very end. As we work our way across, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the intake site. Now, this is where a lot of, I would say, headaches can kind of come up. And this is because people don't fully configure this page. They might set up the online intake, but then not do distribution sites or vice versa. From this point, if you recall, on our sites, we've said there's 3 locations doing intake sites: Christmas warehouse, social service building, and the Tyler core. Those correlate to this tab. So if I wanted to add an intake site, I first add it as a site, and then it will show up on the intake side. You have 2 methods of doing angel tree intake. The first of which is in person, what we might call traditional applications. And that is where someone comes in and sits across from a caseworker, from a volunteer, and they do an intake session. Additionally, as it relates to doing in-person intakes, you can also use an optional appointment feature. So there are some locations, Memphis, for example, what they do is they do in-person applications, but they need to request an appointment. To get the URL, the site is located right here. And now it's a little bit long, but you'll get it at this tab as well as under the appointment section up here. But what would happen here is you would circulate that to the community. You would take only so many online appointment requests, and they would request, and then you would schedule them an appointment time in the same way you schedule a distribution. We'll touch on that this Thursday as we talk about applicant processing. But if I want to set up appointments, I'm going to click this edit pencil here. And this is going to open what is probably a very familiar modal, a familiar pop-up to many of you. Anytime you're scheduling distribution appointments, actual intake appointments, as you'll see eventually on the adoption and drop-off, these all look the same. And so what we're going to happen here is we're going to set our goal. We're going to set a goal of 100 applicants, right? And our segment time here is going to be every 15 minutes. I'm going to jump ahead and we're going to do intake the week of October the first week of October. And I'm just going to click and drag. And we're going to go ahead and set these appointments. Click and drag, click and drag, click and drag. When I'm done, I'll go ahead and save those locations, save the changes. At this point, it says updates have been saved to the database, and I'll just go ahead and close this segment. So now, as you can see, we have an appointment schedule of October 6th to October 9th. We have a goal of 100, but we have slots for 480. That might be too much, but it's up to you and how many slots to give your appointment scheduler some flexibility. If I want to add any documents that would show up as a part of an appointment request, I can put those here. Maybe you have a specific form that you want them to have access to. Maybe it's just a flyer that gives them some instructions and some pointers of where to go. Head up the ramp on the left side of the building. You can add those here, and those will be delivered with the appointment request. Now, when it comes to online interface, there's two sections here. So I'm going to first click the edit pencil here. I have three sections. My first section at the top has to do with online appointment requests, right? We've said that we have a goal of 100, and we might still say our max number of appointment requests is 100. What that means is if you are person 101, the system will automatically say, basically, we're out of slots. Again, you can come and update this as needed. If you get halfway through your intake process and you want to update them and add 10, add 20 slots, you can do that here. This is also where you will make it open or closed. If I set open and save, at this point, if you were to go to this intake request here, and I'll open this in a new tab, and it shows you, I'm going to just put in the zip code, 23456. Click submit. I type in this information. Once that's done, that's all the applicant has to do to request an appointment. If I want to close that, same thing. I just come back into this tab, mark it as closed, and save, right? So that's how we turn this on and off to the public. That is just for online appointments. That's this section here at the top. This next section here is for online applications. This is the second way that you're going to be able to do AngelTree intake. And that is where the individual will go to saangeltree.org, enter their zip code, authenticate in with their one-time password through their email, and they'll fill out the whole application online. This saves your caseworker a significant amount of time in which they're going in to review requests rather than having to do all of the manual entry typing. I will say one thing that gets looked over often is you can do a hybrid model, right? You can do both an appointment request and an online intake. So what that means is the person's still going to come and sit across from me as a caseworker, but the applicant needs to first fill out the application online. They'll fill out the application, submit that, and then they would be able to have their appointment request scheduled to come and bring it. Maybe if you want to have all of their documents brought in person. This is a way that you'll be able to very much kind of do a hybrid of the two. I want to see them, but I want to get the efficiency and the time savings that is the applicant filling out the application without me having to type it in for them as the caseworker. In the same way I set a max number of appointments, I'm going to set a max number of applicants. Now here I'm going to put 500, but I do want to add a word of caution. This is an applicant, not an angel. So if your location can only take 500 angels, you don't want to put 500 applicants because you're going to get way more angels than you anticipated. Now, there's not a perfect science, right? What's the national average is what, 2.5 kids per family, and you can use that as some initial math. But basically, we have to go based on the applicant because the system doesn't know if I'm applying with one kid or if I'm applying with 10 kids before I first get in the system. And so we encourage people to give yourself some buffer. You can always come in and increase this number, right? So if it were me and I was doing if my max angels were 500, I might do 250 applicants. And then as we got closer, I can go in and open up those slots. If I feel that really we can take closer to 280, we can come in and update that number independently. You've got two more sections here, one of which is whether or not I want to require an invitation code. An invitation code is just exactly what it sounds like. It's a code that they get from the Salvation Army that regardless of there being space and regardless of there being them living in the zip code in question, if they have this code, they're going to get into this system. And so some locations require them to essentially request an invitation code. It's rare, but this is where you would require. If, like just as it said, if the code's required, only applicants with that code can apply. Lastly is where you're going to put in your serviceable zip codes. This is basically saying that if these are the zip codes that the system knows can be processed and accurately placing this applicant in this location. Because of that, a zip code can only exist one place in the entire Angel Tree world. I feel bad for Schenectady, New York, because zip code 12345 is a zip code for Schenectady. And probably once a year, they have to reach out to us and say, someone's grabbed this because they think they want to test, they want to do something. They want to just go through the system without it impacting their area. Please don't use 12345. Schenectady would very much appreciate it. But this is where I'm going to go in and add those zip codes. Each of your intake sites will have their own zip codes, their own zip code sets. And so if I'm in North Texas, the Louisville core will have a different set of zip codes than the Denton set of zip codes. And they can only live in one location. When I'm done, I'll click Save. Many people think this is the end of this page, but if this is the very first time, your site's going to look like this. All of your distribution sites are going to set as none until your intake site has an approved distribution site. Your intake site will not work. If I open up the applications to this intake site and make it available to the public, even if there's no distribution site here, it's not going to work. Think of it this way. We want people to be able to apply, and we also want to give the angels out. There has to be an entrance and an exit for this to fully function. And you can add one or as many distribution sites as possible. Let's say for the Christmas warehouse, we want to do both the Christmas warehouse and the social service building. The social service building's distribution site's only going to be that location, etc. What that means is when your caseworkers, when your volunteers are processing the applicants, which we'll talk about on Thursday, if they're from zip code 23456, they can select their distribution site, whether it be the Christmas warehouse or the social service building. There's lots of different ways to do this and to use this to your benefit. If you're doing a food distribution, you can have a distribution site that's basically entitled Christmas warehouse food only. And all of those applicants that are only receiving food would go into that distribution site instead of the regular one. So you've got lots of different ways to kind of handle this. I'm going to encourage you, if you have a business rule that you're trying to accommodate within the system, use our support line. Reach out to support@dataparadigm.com. Sorry, support@tsam.org. I apologize. It's in the chat. So you reach out there and ask us, if I want to accomplish this, how would I set up the system to do so? And so this is where you can handle that. We're going to go through the next two tabs very quickly because they're almost identical. Our adoption site, what I'm doing here is I'm just setting the hours of availability. The North Park Mall here is going to open up for adoption starting on the 3rd of November and run through the 17th of November. And they are going to be open from 9 to 6 each day. and I'll go through this section. And what this does is when this gets distributed, when this gets displayed on our online page, this will this will be displayed as such, right? That the weekly schedule will be Monday through Friday, 9 to 6. If I make a mistake, I just come up and change the segment to be closed and say, oh, they're actually closed over lunch. I'll just change the segment and go ahead and remove those slots accordingly. And as you can see here at the bottom, now the schedule is updated 9 to 12 and 1 to 6. I'll go ahead and close that, and you can see how our schedule here is the 3rd to the 17th. And we'll do that for each one of these locations, right? Well, if you don't configure this, it'll show to the public that the hours of availability has yet to be entered. So if you want to communicate when a location is open and closed, you'll do that here. I'm not going to talk much about drop off, but this is exactly the same. You're going to say, in the same way we're giving them the hours in the adoption of when they can adopt, I'm going to give the hours of when they can drop off. The interface is literally identical. I'll set my open, I'll set my schedule, and I'll move forward accordingly. I want to make sure we have a chance to talk about distribution, because if our intake sites create the most support requests, our distribution sites create the second most. Here we are going to configure the angel codes that are associated with this distribution site. So let's look at we're going to configure the Christmas warehouse. To do so, I'm going to click the edit pencil on the right. In here, I'm going to go in and set my schedule. Let's start at the very top. Let's look first at the family codes here, right? We have said that this distribution site is going to use the codes 2000 to 3000. These codes must be unique across the entire command. That includes any child locations in the event of an area command. I live in Dallas, I'll keep picking on Dallas. Dallas has 16 reporting core that are a part of this area command. All of their family codes must be unique across the entire command. The codes cannot be the same in Louisville as they are in Denton, as they are in Garland, as they are in Fort Worth. They're all going to be independent. My distribution code also needs to be unique across the command, right? So Christmas warehouse, family code, and start. You have two different sets of codes for each distribution site. A family code, which is what I would call your standard angel tree code. And then you have special care. We're going to talk more about this on Thursday, but a special care applicant is designated for what I would call group registrations. This is where you're partnering with a children's home, you're partnering with a nursing home, a rehab facility, and one program director is going to register 15 people. This is a different code, and these are going to be scheduled accordingly. So in the same way here, I can set this to be 3001 to be 3100. Now, this works, but you want to give yourself some buffer. This is where people get into trouble all the time. And this is actually one of the changes. Once we start, in years past, the second you apply someone, these codes get locked down, right? It's been held and closed. Now, this year, you'll be able to update the ladder number as long as you have space to do so. Often we get requests because they want to take in 400 families, and so they only give themselves 400 codes. So then if they want to add just 5 or 10, you have to work to expand, and it becomes a challenge. And so make sure you give yourself a buffer when it comes to the number of codes that you're using. In this case, we've only said we want to accept 500 applicants, so I only need 500 codes, but I have allocated 1,000 to the Christmas warehouse. This gives me complete flexibility if I want to expand the number of applicants I take and distribute from this distribution site. To schedule those distribution sites, I'll scroll down to the bottom. I'll get to my dates, and just as we scheduled everything else starting on December 15th, I click and drag that information through, right? Click and drag, click and drag. When I'm done, I'll save those changes and I'll just close out. And obviously you would build this out more, in order to give yourself the space. But you can see right here, we've configured the Christmas warehouse. We've configured all of these components. And it's for this reason, if you have family codes and distribution codes, that's why under sites, these distribution points are disabled. If I wanted to remove the social service building, all I need to do is come to the social service building. I'm going to delete these codes that are assigned here. I've basically zeroed out this entire application. And so now this site is now able to be removed. I can remove the social service site as a the social service building as a distribution site, should that be necessary. All right, let's jump ahead. I know we're about 2/3 of the way through. We only have just 2 more sections really to go through. And that is, we're going to talk about our applications. You may recall we talked about in-person applications versus virtual applications. Those are configured here and configured independently. The questions that are asked of your applicants when they apply on saangeltree.org can be different than that which is entered in person. We often see what's called a pick list utilized on the virtual site because we don't want people to request a car or a couch or PS5 or iPads. But when they're in person, you don't have to give a pick list because the volunteer or the caseworker that's doing that intake will help guide the applicant towards maybe more appropriate gift requests. To configure them, I'll simply go into I'll click the one I want to configure, in this case, the family applicant. This is the in-person, right? You can see the description. It's for regular families or seniors entered manually by the intake system within TSAMM. And I'm going to walk through step by step, and you will configure those things that are asked, those things that are required, those things that are bypassed altogether. If you have any questions about how these fields are used, they're a little bit up to you, right? For instance, primary identification, secondary identification, the way you utilize these fields are up to you. You can see in this case, we've elected to bypass this step altogether. If I want to simply ask for the address, that will allow the person to skip this field if they so choose. If I say that this is required, that's this second column here, whether it be the intake individual within TSAMM or the applicant online, respectively, they won't be able to proceed to the next step until they answer this question. So as an example, I would recommend not requiring the apartment suite, floor, etc., because not everyone lives in an apartment suite or floor. So I would require the address, but only ask the apartment, thus allowing them to skip that question should that be necessary. And so this is step 1. Step 2 is household members who are not qualified angels, right? We want to capture the totality of that household. That means we need to capture the applicant, the head of household. We need to capture those household members who don't qualify for Angel Tree. Remember, we set the age parameters on this first general step. And then we're going to configure angels here in a second. You can see obvious here that the questions are much more truncated for the household members who aren't qualified angels. You can add or remove questions as necessary. Step 3 is when we're going to add and configure the angel information. You'll see here that certain components have been disabled. That could be whether it be a system requirement like gender that we have to have either male, female, or I prefer not to respond as a gender selection. But the rest of them are up to you. We want a need and a wish, right? We can also choose to use a custom list for each one of these, and we'll touch on that when we do the online intake. But you're going to walk through this, and you're going to essentially ask whatever questions are necessary. Any one of these questions that you present will be presented to the applicant to request for each angel that's eligible. Step 4 is the budget worksheet. You can see here, this is off in its entirety. We can choose to bypass this step altogether. Excuse me. Some locations from a business rule will choose to not ask any financial questions in any way, shape, or form. Because of that, they're going to unselect this top box And therefore, when the intake individual is going through the process, it will skip over this page altogether. If you want to capture that information, same thing. You'll first select this upper box and then configure the rest the same way we did the other pages. Lastly is, do we want to give them the opportunity to upload supporting documents? I will state that more often than not, if you're doing in-person intake, you're not scanning any of those documents per se, because you're just verifying their address eligibility, their income eligibility, any identification, IDs, birth certificates are going to be done in person and not stored within the system. So you can choose to ask or bypass this step altogether. When you're done, you'll click Save and Close, and now we've configured the in-person intake. Now let's skip over here to the public side. This is going to be configured independently, right? This is important to understand. You can see right off the bat, we ask a lot more questions of the online individual than on the virtual individual. Sorry, than on the in-person intake. We can turn these on or off, required as needed. I'm going to skip over the steps. They're the same thing. Household steps are the same. Angel information. I do want to touch on here. If we want to add custom values, so this is an individual that we want to give them a pick list as opposed to a free-form text field. I'll tell you a quick story. A location got a request from an applicant in which they were using a free-form text field. And in the need, they said they needed a car. Well, when the Salvation Army contacted them and said that's not really the type of need that we want to put there, they said these are really needs for the kids. Their response was, well, the child is going to ride in the car. And when they said, well, sorry, sir, this isn't really how it works, they went even further and said, okay, then we need a couch. Well, again, they had to come back and say, well, actually, that's not how it works. Well, the response was, well, the child's going to sit on the couch. All of these things are justifiable, but we want to try to help mitigate some of this as much as possible. And we can do this through a pick list. At which point I'm going to add the needs. I can say one of the needs are a blanket. And then you also get to dictate what ages this presents itself to. So a blanket can be anyone between the ages of 0 and 12, right? We want that to be available for everybody. Same thing, a custom value. The next one here, we might say they need a crib. Well, obviously, if it's a crib, that should only be available for ages 0 to 4. So if I go and I'm trying to sign up my 10-year-old, at this point, I'm only going to see the option as blanket, whereas when I sign up my 3-year-old, I'll see blanket or crib. And you can build this out as exhaustive as you need to get as granular or as broad as you'd like. You get to ultimately choose what goes into this list. I want to show you a few other options that you can use this as well. So you have your need and wish. Often favorites gets used as things they're interested in. So you might put Bluey or Marvel or Barbie, etc., and let them choose. They need a blanket and they really like Hot Wheels. And so that helps to give some direction. Same thing, you're going to set a minimum or max angel age. But perhaps you want to be able to run a report on the elementary schools that these kids attend. I'm not sure the exact use cases for this, but I can come here to add values, and we're going to update this to be elementary schools. But you can see here on each one of these pick lists, there's a data point that says show on adoption site. So when I'm configuring my need and wish, those things that we want to print on the angel tag, I'm going to be sure to check this box. But if I'm capturing elementary schools, I don't want this to show up on the angel tag when I print it. So I can come here and I can put in my information, Creekside Elementary, right? And I'm going to set that between the ages of 5 and 12. And then I can choose a not applicable that's between the ages of 0 and 4, right? That they're not in elementary school. It's not applicable. You can go through and you can build this out as a way to capture information. Maybe from a ministerial standpoint, you want to see, find out if they're interested in music programs, yes or no. Are they interested in after-school programs? Yes or no, right? We don't want to show on the adoption site, but how nice would it be to be able to, after the season, to be able to say, hey, give me a printout of all the kids that said that they're interested in our core music programs, or those locations that are interested in our boys and girls clubs, or the Red Shield centers, or those after school programs, right? Then we can reach out to those applicants and really start to bridge the gap between Angel Tree and the ministry that's taking place at the Salvation Army. I'm going to go through and build those out. I'll walk step by step, the same thing. You can skip or include the budget question as needed. You see, we didn't see the document question there. That's because there's an entirely different document section here for online Angel Tree applicants. In this case, we want to see the birth certificates for each angel, and we want identification for the main applicant. What this means is, because we said we want the birth certificate for each angel, if they sign up 4 angels, the system is going to expect 4 documents, and it won't allow them to submit until they've uploaded those 4 documents. If I put the identification here for both the applicant and the household member, then if they sign up mom, dad, uncle, grandma, all 4 of which are not eligible for Angel Tree, it won't let them submit the application until there's an identification for all 4. This is entirely configurable. When I go to add a required document, I can add one, and I could make lease agreement. I phrase it in whatever manner makes sense to the people in my community, the people that are going to apply. So if proof of residency is better versus lease agreement, that's entirely up to you. If I want to remove visa, I can remove that as an option, right? So it doesn't show up. Now you'll also see that lease agreement currently isn't selected. So therefore, when the applicant goes through, it's not going to be asked these questions. Now be careful to say, okay, the lease agreement, well, I need the lease agreement for everybody. I want everyone to set this up. But if you set this up this way, the applicant is going to have to upload a document, the satisfied lease agreement, for every single person in that household, right? For the most part, you only need one. So if you only need one, we're only going to assign it to the applicant. If I do all 3 and there's 7 people in that household, they're going to be uploading 7 copies of the lease agreement, right? And that's not going to be helpful to you. The last, we got 2 more tabs, seasonal programs. This is where we're able to go in and add markers, right? We have a seasonal program here called Interested in Pathway of Hope, that we want to add a checkbox that's going to be on each applicant, and we'll talk more about this on Thursday, that says, hey, I want to know if this applicant is interested in Pathway of Hope. I want to know if the applicant that was done at the Christmas warehouse, if they're coming to the Breakfast with Santa event on the Saturday before Christmas. This is entirely up to you. Again, it's a free form text box that is only used internally. The caseworker or whoever has access to that applicant would be able to go in and check these boxes accordingly. Lastly, before we open it up for some questions, and I appreciate you guys have been hanging out with me, is you're going to set up your public site. Not every location utilizes this feature, but if you do, you're going to configure a public site. So if I come here and open up the public site, here is the Tyler, Texas Online Angel Tree, Tyler, Texas. And as I walk through, there's lots of information, right? There's data here, there's a video, there's scripture messages that are here, there's processes. Remember how we talked about intake adoption locations, right? Here are those locations. If I click on this little tree for Angel Tree adoption, this is the Tyler Court. It says schedule coming soon. We didn't configure this one. But if I find the one that we set up already for drop off, oh, apologies. Right, here's the one we configured, the North Park Mall, right? The angel adoption is here. These are the hours that you can go to adopt an angel from this location. You can point people towards this site to help lessen the calls you get to be able to handle all of this information. As I scroll down, there's additional information, links to adopt an angel. This often gets circulated as a way to as a way to engage with the community. This entire site is configured in your on your online tab here, right? If I scroll down, here's where we add all of our information, right? What's our area name. Remember, if this was the Tyler, rather than Tyler, Texas, if we want this to be Tyler County, if I save those changes now, if I come back to the page and refresh, it's going to be Tyler County instead of Tyler, Texas, right? This is where you can be granular in what gets communicated to the public. And you can get pretty granular, your different social media handles, including, this will all be pre-populated unless you've already changed it, but we've got different pictures. Perhaps I want to highlight volunteers, and so I'm going to choose an image here of volunteers. Here's a good volunteer pic. So I'm going to go ahead and use a selected picture. So I'm going to update that. And then, well, this picture now is over her face, and so I want to put it in a different position. Let's put it in the bottom right. And now I can talk about what it means to volunteer for Angel Tree. All of these things to be configured in the system. I'm not going to get too granular in this section because it's pretty self-explanatory as it gets displayed. Scripture, video. I will highlight one section here at the very bottom. This section here talks about the history of Angel Tree. There's a section here where you get to configure your local history. How many angels did you help last year? How long have you been in your community? Maybe how many angels you served all time. Maybe you just passed 50,000 angels over the last 30 years that you've helped in your community. You can handle that. Lastly, here's the ability to add corporate and partners that gets listed on your websites. It is 1:56, and we have blazed through this site, and it by no means is intended for you guys to go away and feel like you understand 100% of what's happening here. But we want to give you a solid foundation of how to get in and then be able to ask us questions as needed. And so what I want to be able to do here is we're going to go in and answer some questions. I have names, and if you are comfortable, if I need you to clarify that question, by all means, I will ask you to do so. And we're going to work through this, some of these questions that have come through. The first question here is from Heather. Using the custom fields for pick lists, will the name of the custom field show on the standard template tag when you print it out? Last year's R did not, so when our custom field said favorite color on the application, the tag would say custom field pink. This caused a lot of confusion, as I imagine it would. So as with any custom software, sometimes things will come up. In the event, Heather, if you reported this and I missed it, I apologize. But when that happens, I will double check that to make sure that the custom fields are respecting those names. I believe they do, so I need to be able to dive a little bit deeper, and I'll do some testing to better understand where that comes from. But Heather, we'll go ahead and make sure that is accurate this year when you go to print your custom tags. But this is a really good example here. If that comes up and you need to get something fixed quickly, we are here to address those needs. Sometimes last year we had 800 campaigns and we did just under 1 million angels across the entire Angel Tree platform. There's a lot of nuances that come up, and sometimes, unfortunately, bugs get introduced, and we make every effort to correct those as quickly as possible. So by all means, go ahead, Heather, and anyone else, reach out to support to report those as soon as you can, and we'll get those addressed in very short order. A question for, if I pronounce your name wrong, please forgive me. It's Cecily or Cecily. Our organization's taking on a new site at our local community college. We would like to be able to identify all children who have a parent or guardian enrolled in that college. How do we best capture this information? What I'm going to suggest for you to do this is, I guess, ultimately, Cecily, this is going to be kind of done in a couple ways. If these individuals from the local community college are going to come in and get a code, you can use an invitation code. So you can come under admin, go to invitation codes here, and we're going to talk more about this on Friday, but you're going to generate a group code, right? Let's say I want to generate 100 codes from my warehouse site, but I want it to be a group, and this group name is local community college, right? Once I do that, and as long as they use that code to register, you'll be able to easily identify all those individuals that are from that community college. That's the easiest way to be able to handle that. To be able to do that, you can still enforce the zip code restrictions. Again, we'll talk more about this later. But this is where you'll be able to go in and use that as a way to identify those individuals from the local community college as it relates to intake. Let me work our way through. If by all means, Dan, highlight any that's for me. We're right at 2 o'clock. I'm going to stay on and answer these questions that have been submitted. If that comes through, by all means, if you got to hop because you're busy, I understand. This video and all of its questions will be available in short order after this event. Question, does the TSAMM Angel Tree Manager offer any bilingual use? Can it take applications in Spanish, or will we be able to convert Spanish versions of everything ourselves? So the online intake site is in Spanish. So if I come here, and I'll just show you an example. If I go right now to saangeltree.org, at the very top, I'm going to change my language to Spanish. At this point, it'll change the entire site and all of its questions to Spanish with a few caveats, right? For the example, if you use a custom name, it's not going to update that. That name will still be in English, or in English, if that's what you typed it in that way. But this is a way for you to be able to change that language. So all of the public site is able to be done in Spanish. Your admin site right now is only in English. And so you'll be able to handle that. We are working on a tool to potentially try to translate, but I will suggest this. This is another place where the pick lists come into play, because sometimes people under need, instead of saying pants, will say pantalones. Well, if they put pantalones, that's what's going to print on the Angel tag. If we use a pick list, they're going to be able to pick, and they'll be able to derive some of those basic words. That way, when you go to print the Angel tag, it's going to print it in a language understood by your donors. All right, let me jump through here. Apologies, I'm jumping through here. All right, a question from Ama is, an example is if you're putting a crib for up to 4 months, a baby toy for a 2-year-old. So yeah, correct. The ages right now are year to year, right? So it doesn't give you that granular a restriction on your angel gifts in your when you're doing a pick list, right? So if you want 0 to 18, you're going to have to do 0 to 2. If you want to do 0 to 4 months, you're going to do 0 to 1. It does expand it out a little bit, but hopefully that gives you some buffer there. But yeah, we don't get that granular. I can tell you from someone who's 6'5", I was a very different sized 12-month-old compared to others. And so it gives you some flexibility there from age ranges. All right, let me see if there's any more here that have been marked to answer live. Dan, by all means, unmute and highlight any for me and handle this. Okay. So there's a question here from Samantha as it relates to a toy shop model. I guess this kind of would be a question for Samantha to better understand how they get gifts. And so what I would do is those locations that use a toy shop model, when they go into their application settings, so let's take away the fact, I'm going to operate on a presumption that you don't do any angel adoption, right? That you do more just general toy drives where you're putting boxes, places, and then they come in and they go through the system. When I go to register people for Angel Tree, I'm going to go to my Angel Tree public. And when I get to the angel step, which is step 3, I'm actually going to turn off the need, the wish, the clothing type. I don't want any of this information. So I'm going to get the name, I'm going to get the age, I'm going to get the name and the gender of the person registering for Angel Tree, but that's all I get. I don't need to know what they want. I don't need to know what their favorites are, what their size is. You can remove those altogether if you're using a toy shop model in which you really don't need to see that until they come in. You'll still use the distribution appointment. You'll still be able to tell them when to come. It's just the act of how I translate this from the toys from the public to the toys being given to the applicant is really up to you. If you do kind of a hybrid model where we see this in a new location in Ohio, in which they need angels to be adopted, but in the end, they're doing something different. A tool that we have this year that we don't get doesn't get used very frequently is the idea of replica angels. These are angels that, for all intents and purposes, are fake, and they can be allocated online to be adopted by the public, but they don't translate to anyone in the system. And so this is a location we had in the Chicago area, which development wanted to be able to engage with donors and bring that in. But in the end, they weren't really allocating little Jeff, who grew up in Streamwood, Illinois, to a donor, right? But that could still get a gift and be handled in that way. Let me see if there's any other questions here. I'm going to answer just a few more, and forgive me, just for time's sake, we're going to start to wrap this up here in the next 5 minutes. But we'll go ahead and add this here. Barbara asks a question, what if you will accept a few different options for documentation, such as verifying address? If I add these options, how will an applicant know that it can be one document for verification rather than all? For example, we accept recent utility bills, applicant's name, or a printout of from social services, as well as the renter's lease. What we see is people will put all of that into one field. So what I mean by this is if I go to my documents tab, I'm going to add a document that basically says lease agreement, recent utility bill. Now you have a limited, I still have 164, but they'll add a few, or printout from Social Security office, right? You'll want to make sure this casing and things are looked, but I can add that there. And if I would make this available. And so in one field, I'm going to give them their options, right? You only have 300 characters. I understand there are limitations to that. But by all means, you're able to go ahead and handle that accordingly. And so that's how you would handle it. I can take 2 more questions. I think Samantha just clarified her about the intake. Yeah, so if you want to, when you do intake for children, if you're using a toy shop model, you can either ask for needs and wishes or not. It's really kind of up to them. And it sounds like you said, you clarified here, you adopt and then you let parents come through for those that were not adopted. And so you kind of handle that accordingly, right? It seems like you've got a good model there. In the end, you're going to give them a distribution appointment, and the manner in which you get distributed will be addressed accordingly. Listen, it's been a privilege for you to be with me. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me for an extra 10 minutes, for those of you that did. This video will be available within 7 days for you to circulate as needed. By all means, reach out to us if you have any additional questions, and hopefully I'll see all of you back at the same time on Thursday to look at applicant management and processing. Thank you guys very much. I look forward to seeing all that you do to serve your communities this season. God bless.